The trick, Mr. Danaher, is not minding where they came from. I'm Josh Trienza. Of course, they came from Silver Screen, a podcast about films and us dissecting them each week. With me, as always, is Damian. How are we, Damian?
I'm going great, buddy. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, that's all we can really hope for in this crazy world that we live in now.
Truly is.
Brexit, man. Anything's possible these days. This podcast might not be around next week. I might decide to leave.
I'll have to get a new one in. He's going to have some real fucked up blonde hair.
Well, don't set your standards too high.
Well, I would have hoped that Scoot would come onto the show to try and fill in, but I was.
I don't know if you can afford him.
This is true.
I mean, he's a big hot shot, unknown indie actor.
Yeah, it's just a little something on the side.
He could command scale wage.
Yeah, but
if he wanted to,
but that's going to the NHS. So we can't put that money aside. And I don't want to lie to him.
Scoot's a British citizen.
It's going to the NHS, and I don't want to lie to him about where it's going. All right, I'm not going to tell him things like that. You're listening to the Brexit podcast,
where our views are as black and white as the people that are staying and going.
Whoa! This is unfortunately true. Well, that's what most of population of the UK want.
Oh, well, I don't know. We got some grey opinions in there somewhere, I suppose, don't we? In the same way that like a third generation, British citizen of Indian descent would be accosted by a man from, let's say, Manchester, just to really make people upset. And he feels the need to be racist, but he's not quite sure why.
It's that bitter yearning. It's very strange that Scotland, of all people, do not want the said freedom. It really must be getting their goat against their William Wallace ancestry.
I was going to say, if they can't reference that movie anymore, what can they do as a nation?
Yeah, well, I know we have to reference films.
These are the questions that we ask ourselves. This is what keeps us up late at night, ladies and gentlemen. There is a high possibility that all of this will get cut.
Not anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. This week we're talking about the British Empire, and in that we watched the 1962 film Lawrence of Arabia.
David Lean film. It doesn't really get much bigger and bolder than this. And I honestly, if I had to sum this up in any words whatsoever, it'd actually be the words of Omar Sherif, who I saw in an interview where he basically summed the movie up thusly, where he said that if you are a man with the money and somebody comes to you and says he wants to make a film that's 4 hours long with no stars and no women and no love story and not much action either, and he wants to spend a huge amount of money to go film it in the desert, what would you say? I think that answers it perfectly. It's an absolute miracle that this film got made. Even back then. Nowadays, never in a billion years would this film get made.
Yeah, let's get right into it. This film shouldn't have been made, but holy Christ, am I glad that it was made. Like this,
absolutely.
It doesn't make any sense how someone went, yeah, let's do this. this will work.
Let's throw untold amounts of money and men and time and technology into filming this, gargantuan undertaking. And to seal the deal, let's cast a guy that's never acted in a movie before as the lead character, who is in every scene for almost 4 hours.
And yeah, let's see how that works. A budget of $15 million. That's
which
estimated
by
amount.
Today's standards,
That's
I'd have
huge.
to assume that'd be like Avatar levels of money today.
And then I think it made like half of that. Like it wasn't it wasn't a big film by any stretch. It was
in terms of response.
Yeah, it is. And it is only after the fact that it has garnered almost perfect reviews.
Yeah. Although, at the time, it did do a pretty decent sweep at the Oscars.
This is true.
Yep. Did director, sound editing, film editing, picture, and those are just the ones that it won. Peter O'Toole picked up his first nomination for that, first of 7, and the man never won. Musical score by Maurice Jarre, the cinematography by Freddie Young, which I'm sure we're going to go back to because for those of you who have seen the movie, you'll understand more than anything else. It is a very visual film, almost pure in how little it sort of beholds itself to anything except what it shows.
Yeah, it is. Though there isn't a love story in it, at least in the first part of this film, there is a very large love of the desert, which is held onto by Peter O'Toole's character, the titular
T.E.
Lawrence, but also I think everyone who was making this film, they loved the desert. They loved shooting it and capturing its magnificence.
I think that has to be. As the Arab characters in this film point out, it's almost it's a peculiarity that's almost native only to the people that don't have to live there.
Yes, the Arab man doesn't love the desert. He loves green trees and water.
And water and things like that. There is nothing in the desert and no man needs nothing.
Absolutely.
And so it goes back. So this movie is in a way based on a kind of a perversion almost. This is, there's an adoration towards the desert that, like, by any measure of logic shouldn't actually exist. And I suppose we should start by saying, has there ever been a stranger character at the lead of what by these days' standards would be called a major blockbuster?
Yeah. So, Peter O'Toole's, T. Lawrence was a real man. This is he did, this is based upon his writings. And then there's
and his experiences, Arabian Peninsula, World War I, uniting the Arab tribes to take on the Turks to help out the British and French, in their attempts to take them down from Europe. And so in the process, he's torn between the desire to belong in, his home country and the societal mores that they've set up, and then, but also his complete lack of ability to fit in with that crowd. And then he finds, this new world of the desert, of the Arab tribes, and finds a new kind of feeling of home, homeliness and attraction, really.
And then it
And
it then goes beyond that as well. Like it shows that perversion, and then it shows, it's the film starts off with this depiction of what the Englishmen see the Arab people as, and then it goes forth, and it then shows you that manifested only under the tutelage of said Englishman, who did describe them at the very, the first half hour. He's calling their
as
barbarism
a little
and,
people.
Yeah,
a little people, a silly people.
And then he turns. There's a very big part of it that he then causes them to be that sort of thing. So it not only romanticizes that perversion, but it also flips that on its head, and it then understands that what it is in fact doing. It knows that it's as much in the wrong as it is in the right to show the beauty of this, that it is not all, sunshine and lollipops.
No, there is an inherent violence in, that part of the world, not only in the land, but in the cultures that have been forced to take up residence, and almost by necessity have retained a kind of a necessary level of august brutality, just purely because that's how you survive.
Yeah, and that's shown by, when we first see, we're first introduced to Omar Sherif, Sherif Ali. It is him murdering a man for drinking from his well when he shouldn't have. And that's, that person, which it's a very interesting way to introduce a character to us who becomes so beloved.
Yeah, because, in any other film, that's it. He's just been set up as, if not, the villain, then like a minor henchman or something like that.
He is man garbed in black who then murders a man.
After making a very dramatic, slow emergence from the distance, terror built up in the, peripheral characters. And then, suddenly he is nowhere near the beast that Lawrence becomes by the film's conclusion.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, there's. He did that. Sherif did that out of necessity, because that is the law of the land. It is brought up, and it's brought up at that point, and it then informs parts of the film following.
It's a very, for its time, I have to say, a very progressive way of looking at Arab culture, in the sense that it just depicts what occurs as, like, the camera just regards it implacably. Really, there's no sense of painting it for horror's sake or anything like that. It's a question of, honor and tradition, and more than anything else, a necessity of survival. And it kind of goes a long way towards sort of chastising the audience, in a sense, even if it does it subliminally, by not, doing what you would expect them to do with these characters. Yeah,
it's very much, we are still in a time where that fear of many Arab people. And so this film, what I really love about this is that it shows that the true barbarism that that Western society believed to have come from that time, and that those people is not. It is only made true manifest by ourselves, by us perverting the land for our own means, and the people to be, to our will.
Yeah, it's a kind of like strange Western presumption that, like still happens, now. Nothing's changed really. This presumption that everyone wants what we have, and that it's all kind of everyone desires democracy. Everyone desires to live in a city with all the accoutrements of the civilized Western world, when then, as to be frank now, I think it's like pretty damn obvious that like not every country in the world is suited for democracy.
Well, it's not suited to it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And for any one person to think that, basically gentrifying an entire landscape that they do not truly understand is wrong, and it will cause ill on the people.
Yeah. It's kind of curious though, because I mean, I noticed so many parallels between. You've seen The Green Zone, haven't you?
I don't believe I have. No.
Paul Greengrass film with Matt Damon about the Iraq War, WMD, and everything like that.
Yeah, I don't know if I had.
Ring a bell? Oh well. Anyway, there's a scene in that movie where there's the standard sort of action thriller tale that's going on with Matt Damon's character, but then in the background there's this other story going on about how one side of the crew wants to keep all of Saddam's generals and underlings in power to maintain a structure of authority in the midst of the otherwise complete collapse of this country, whereas America wants to create a new democracy with a figurehead that I think it was Karzai, although I could be wrong, he might have come after, but basically a guy that had been in exile for 20 years or some such, brought him in as this guy that claimed to know what the Arabs wanted, tried to set up a whole council. And there's a scene towards the end of Green Zone where this meeting is disintegrating into chaos, and it is a mirror image of
the Arab United Council.
The Arab Council just collapsing into disarray in Lawrence of Arabia. And it's just this beautiful mirror image to see that 70, 80 years on, quite literally nothing has changed.
And what's very strange about even the scene in Lawrence of Arabia is that it's Lawrence himself who's saying that no, you cannot. If we ask for aid, we are in ruin. And it's like, well, buddy, do you not see what's happening already? You can't just push yourself into this and expect people who are not engineers to take over a power generator. And, when they speak of it as machines, they do not, large machines, they don't understand it. So how could they, they do not have the expertise for this. It's very strange to see it, and to see it, back 50 odd years ago, and similar mistakes have been made. And I believe that this, Lawrence of Arabia shows that, heed a message that it's giving. I think this film has a great respect for the land, the people, and the audience themselves.
Yeah. And you see it in the way that the movie's shot, in the way that it's composed, and how scenes are played out. It's it gives the audience the benefit of the doubt in terms of intelligence. I mean, there's a reason that this movie is almost 4 hours long, and that's because it takes its time. It's because it allows scenes to play out at a languorous, natural pace. You see, like, all of the early scenes, in any other movie, the first half of Lawrence of Arabia would be conflated into about 30 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that the only real quotable line from it that everyone knows, thanks in part to Prometheus, is in the first 15 minutes, and it's such a departure from it then. It's like, yeah, that's a nice little introduction, and it's like, bam, all right, we're off and running. Here comes the actual film.
And into a place where, ironically, the movie starts to mirror the nature of the land, where talk is not nearly as important as action, and so you see dialogue slowly but surely as the movie progresses just start to drift away,
and we're left to come up with our own reasonings for this. In particular, the machinations of Lawrence, because he is very much an enigma throughout this.
There's so much of his character that was unknowable simply because it was unknowable, or in the film is unknowable because it just wasn't germane to portray certain facets of his character back in 1962. But the beauty of the film is that it's all there if you want to see it. The social awkwardness, the masochism, especially, I've noticed on subsequent viewings, putting out the match with, his finger in that first scene, and having that line, the trick is not minding that it hurts. Who says that?
Yeah, that's sort of, if it wasn't said by Peter O'Toole, you could have sworn that it's said by a serial killer.
Yeah, exactly. Or, in the train derailing scene where they attack the train, and that rogue soldier shoots him in the shoulder. He doesn't seem to mind all that much.
No, not at all. He in fact relishes it.
He very quickly begins to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And, there's that kind of, there's a strangeness to it. And I don't think, and I mean, there's also the question of his, sexual orientation, which I think now most people seem to agree that, he was gay, but obviously you could never portray that at the time. But they still, dropped so many subtle hints left, right, and center, and in so doing, paint such a more organic character.
Yeah, they didn't allow it to, so Peter O'Toole's performance.
Exactly. And I don't think any other man except O'Toole could have done that. This like strange combination of, his looks, which were insanely beautiful. Back when he was young, coupled with the awkwardness of his physicality.
Yeah. And he did.
And then, his voice as well, which had this beautiful, velvety sense of old school British authority, but like it could also be portrayed as insolent at the same time. It could be kindly or dickish. And so it's all.
It was
there.
it was very audacious. His performance did have, this is a man of the theatre, and he did play up the theatrics of Lawrence.
But I don't think that was a bad thing.
No, it's because it does lean into the subtext that, the unspoken subtext of it, but it really enriches both his performance and performances of others.
Yeah. Because I mean, this was a man who was larger than life, and so playing it, method, internal, roiling emotions bubbling beneath the surface just wouldn't have worked for this.
No, you could have
character.
You could have done the strong man, the stoic, having a stoic leading man type in this film, and it would have fallen apart at the seams.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a film that, I don't know how it was made. This is catching lightning in a bottle, and everything fell into place that made it worthwhile for it to be made in such a way. So many things could have gone wrong in doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hear about, the stories from the set, and the movie obviously had its, fair share of difficulties on set, but at the end of the day, the result is just there on the screen for you to see. It is quite simply one of the most beautiful pictures ever made.
Yeah, and it is a real shame that I'm sure you watching this was on either a television or a laptop.
It was on a television, more's the pity, because that is absolutely not the way this movie needs to be seen.
And what's sadder still is I don't know if we're going to be able to see this in its truest, viewing in a theater. 70mm projector.
70 millimeter, exactly. Because that's the only way. Because I mean, you and I can appreciate the power of the film and the grandeur of its craftsmanship and the legacy of it all. This movie is more than 50 years old now. It's almost it's 55 almost. But there's certain scenes like Omar Sherif's first appearance as a speck on the horizon that on a TV just loses all meaning.
Yeah.
Because you say, what am I looking at? On a gigantic screen with the proper grandeur of the 70mm, with the detail of the resolution of the widescreen and everything, with the soundtrack blaring at you from the speakers. I haven't seen it like that, but I have to assume that it would just carry you to another level in terms of a viewing experience.
Yeah, and this is made for the 70mm treatment. It's got an intermission in it. Like, it was made for that.
Well, it's the classic, old school epic movies from the 60s, like, like Dr. Zhivago, which David Lean made just after, like Ben-Hur, with Willie Wyler, or, Cecil B. DeMille's, The Ten Commandments, all those old school movies. I mean, it's sort of, back in the day where you would go to the movies to see these because that was the only place you could see films like this.
Yeah, it was an outing. This was an experience much like going to the opera or the theatre.
It was an event.
Yeah.
You dress up to go see that shit.
Yeah, and this is a film that does play into that sort of regality and excess.
Yeah, but again, excess not in a way that I think people would expect.
Well,
and certainly not in the way that people would expect now.
Well, it plays into it, but it also turns it on its head.
Yeah, it subverts the notion.
I can't imagine many people would have been too happy in various parts of this film on viewing it. It must have been very strange for the time. That's why I would assume that is what led to it not making as much money as it basically cost, despite being critically acclaimed.
Yeah. Well, I heard a very, interesting story because I was reading through Roger Ebert's analysis of the film, like, his review and everything like that. And so they did a big remaster of the film in 1989.
Yeah, because the reels were damaged.
Yeah, so these film restorers, Robert A. Harris and Jim Paynton, they discovered the original negative in Columbia Studios vaults, just in crushed, rusting film cans, and had to put it together like one crumbling frame at a time.
Yeah, that's
which I can't even fathom, and it's nuts because I've got the Blu-ray remaster, and it looks like it was shot last week.
absolutely.
It's just amazing, and it's honestly incredible that the film actually still survives in a format that people can view now, and it's a shame because in the same sense that perhaps not everyone understood the film back then, although obviously a certain portion of the crowd did, to give it the acclaim that it got at the Oscars and everything like that. But I mean, can you imagine a film like this doing well today?
I'd find it very hard to. We're not, to be filmed in the way it did. We had to do, it was a film that had to be shot by Tarantino. So that's the last time that a film like this has been shot. Then we're looking at, a look at, the people of the Middle East. That's not going to happen this day and age. And that's really not going to work out.
Yeah. I mean, and try the fact that in 227 minutes of runtime, there is not a single female speaking role.
No, they're in one scene.
Yeah. And I'd say only one scene do you actually see females actually doing anything except being extras or being dead. And it's just before they kick on off to Aqaba with Aouda, and you see all the females doing the tribal cries as like a farewell, but that's it.
Yeah, and that could that's nothing. It's insanity. Like,
I mean, the fact that there's blackface.
Yeah, Alec Guinness is in this film, and he is playing the Prince Faisal.
Prince Faisal. Yeah.
So, yeah.
But also Anthony
Quinn, who is a Mexican man, or is he Spanish?
Mexican by birth.
By birth. So he's playing Adua. Like, this is that's Omar Sherif is the Egyptian man in this.
He's Egyptian. He was already a star when this movie actually.
Yeah, he's probably the biggest star of this film, aside from Alec Guinness.
I mean, and to be fair, also there was Jose Ferrer, who played the Turkish Bey, who it's heavily implied.
Oh yes,
raped Lawrence.
Yes. Well, yeah, that was a lot of as he goes up.
Yeah,
he had his shirt off and smoking whilst Lawrence was being caned. It had all that subtext in there. Once again, it's not. It is showing you enough to lead your mind to that place, but it never states these facts.
Yeah, well, I mean, this guy was a legend. He's Puerto Rican by, birth, but he won an Academy Award in 1950.
Oh wow! So he's been going at it
for Cyrano de Bergerac, and so he was already big, and so he actually got paid more than O'Toole and Sherif combined.
Wow. He was not in it for very long at all. 10 minutes, if that.
$25,000.
Wow.
Plus a Porsche. And that was more than what the two main characters of the film got paid as well.
It pays to be Bay.
Sometimes the exchange rate just fucks with me. I just can't believe that 25,000 used to be considered a lot of money. I mean, I consider it a lot now, but that's because I'm broke. But that's not an accurate representation.
Yeah, that doesn't inflate.
No, like not at all.
Broke.
Yeah. We shouldn't discount Claude Rains as well as Mr. Dryden.
Oh, he's fantastic in this. Just being the what was his actual like? Was he just looks like the man, the businessman on top who runs it all.
Yeah, he was like a
global fixer.
He was a French attaché or something like that. Some guy with no job title, but who was super important and made all the decisions. I mean, he'd already achieved legend for being Captain Renault in Casablanca back in 1942.
Oh yes.
The guy that walks off into the mist with Humphrey Bogart's Rick.
The beautiful friendship.
Says, I think this is going to be the start of a beautiful friendship. So this was a movie that, it filled out the supporting actors with, people that, they knew could do a good job. I suppose it's strange to think of it in terms of, using blackface and everything. I mean, we could talk about this a lot. I mean, I would argue that back then there might not have been the wealth of talent to draw upon from nations like, Turkey or Egypt or Jordan, where they filmed them, and so were forced to go for actors dressing up. But then at the same time, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a fact now that there's no excuse, but we have seen so many movies recently
that still uses it as an excuse that there's no people out there. But I think, yeah. So it's even stretched. A Puerto Rican man, a Mexican man, even them getting those roles is still like, yeah, it's a very strange thing that Hollywood does in swapping out people of.
I think it has to do with like a relic of this notion of bankable names that is very is dying out quite fast, I think, in Hollywood, but still somehow manages to cling on, because I don't think many people would. You can't really sell a movie on who's in it anymore.
No, this isn't.
There's maybe a handful of people that can, by their very name alone, open a movie for a really big box office take. I'd say Tom Cruise is one, Will Smith is another, and maybe Harrison Ford if it's Indiana Jones or something like that.
And then even then with Will Smith and Tom Cruise, even then we'll see how they go with Jack Reacher 2 and Suicide Squad.
Exactly.
And even then Jack Reacher seems to be the one that obviously it's Tom Cruise in this, but Suicide Squad I would argue that Margot Robbie is more of a draw than Smith.
It's certainly like they certainly seem to be focusing more and more on her in the trailers. She's the character that everyone's excited about. They're already planning a spin-off movie just for her. So, I mean, there's every indication that she's the one that's going to walk away with it. Yeah. And that's the thing that confuses me, because if you look at a movie like, Ridley Scott's Exodus.
Yeah. So that's another one
or more recently, Gods of Egypt, the new Alex Proyas film.
Yes, the car crash.
Yes, exactly. That gloriously abominable car crash of a
it's
film.
Like a Rolls Royce crashing.
You see both of those movies, and it's all Anglo actors being cast as, Egyptians.
Yeah.
And it's just absolute insanity. I remember reading an interview with Ridley Scott where they asked him, look, why did you whitewash this film? And he said, you're not going to get $150 million of funding by casting Muhammad so-and-so in this. Which is...
Well, Lawrence of Arabia had a man named Omar in it.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
That's the thing, and especially nowadays where people don't really care that you're a movie star as much anymore, because with social media, everyone's their own star now. So I mean, there's that lack of disconnect between the two worlds now. So I think now people will just want to see a movie that's good, and they don't give a shit whether the actor's known or unknown. And yet the studios keep wanting to hang on to this idea that if it's a known quantity, it's going to do better.
Yeah, and it's no longer the days where, Sir Ben Kinsley is playing Gandhi. We can actually have and should have the actors be of the same nationality of the people they're trying to portray, or at the very least make the character agnostic, gender and race agnostic, like we saw in Sunshine.
Although, to be fair, I mean, Kingsley is half Indian.
He is half Indian?
Yes, he was. His birth name was Krishna Banji.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, fuck. I look a fool then. I did not know that. That's insane.
No, legit. Yeah, his dad was born in Kenya and was of Gujarati Indian descent.
Wow.
And his grandfather was a trader who lived in India and then moved to Zanzibar, and his mother was British.
That's quite the trek.
And so,
hell of a trek.
He was born in Yorkshire,
and so he kept.
But he has the.
But Ben Kinsley is not his.
He's got the genetics. No.
Wow. But then he changed his name for it?
Well, I think it's his stage name.
Ah, gotcha. And then the Sir. So he's not technically Sir Ben Kingsley. He's.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he made the change legit or not. I don't know that much, but yeah, no.
Yeah, see, that's where I always assumed that Ben Kingsley was his birth name, and that's played into he was of pure British descent.
Well, he was certainly born and raised British, but it was but it's funny. I know we're going off on a tangent now, but it kind of worked for the character, because the whole point of Mohandas Gandhi was that he was born in India, but then fucked off to South Africa and became a hotshot lawyer for
that's right,
X number of years, and then came back to India and was almost a stranger in his own land. So having
okay, that does paint that in. It doesn't. I don't think it takes away from the point that we're trying to make, but that is an interesting
but
sort of characterization of
thing.
it.
But the thing I kind of found amazing about Gandhi and Lawrence of Arabia both was that both of those guys, O'Toole and Kingsley, it was the first movie they'd ever done.
It blows my mind that this is the first film that O'Toole has done. He has been acting.
Let's give the man credit. I mean, he did acting school. He went to one of the best acting schools on the planet. He'd been in countless stage plays and everything like that. But film acting is different. But to see someone just take to it so quickly and easily,
and then still, he knew where to bring in his theatre acting to make this role shine. As we said before, the theatrics that he brought in played off the character himself.
Yeah, it was there was a bigness to the performing.
A grandeur.
A grandeur, and that's kind of a word that actually I want to sort of touch on for a minute or two, because I mean, this film is grand. There's no denying that for a second. And I mean, if you ask someone to say, what the genre is of this film, they would say an epic, an historical epic or something like that. But now every movie with a $150 million budget is called an epic.
Yeah. Well, people would say that Exodus is an epic film.
Yeah. And so I kind of wanted to touch on that in terms of the difference between now and then. So I mean, what would you define as an epic film?
Well, see, yeah, it really is a pre and post sort of Hollywood, whereas an epic then allowed a film to breathe, and it showed great majesty in the craft of all aspects. In the sound design, in the directing, in the cinematography, in the acting itself. It allowed it to breathe and to really play itself up to its fullest extent. I think epic films nowadays are about scale. It's the Michael Bay, the more bloodshed and destruction and the stakes being ever higher. A Roland Emmerich film, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny we're talking about this this film this week when 20 years hence from the first one coming out, we've got a brand new Independence Day movie, which has absolutely upped the scale and the technology and the vividness of the destruction going on the screen. But does that make it more epic than the movie that, to be fair, blew my mind back in 1996?
Yeah, because
I don't think it does.
I think the first one was far more epic because of the way it makes the audience feel. And
there it is.
Yeah, it is the feelings that
it's about the ideas.
Yeah,
and Lawrence of Arabia does not have an epic story per se.
I think if you just held it up on the plot points, it would fall down very quickly.
Yeah, the plot is for the most part almost non-existent. He wants to go to Arabia. He doesn't. He does. He doesn't. I mean, that's not to put a kibosh on the sort of emotional through line of what O'Toole does with Lawrence in terms of him coming to deal with.
Well, I think it shows
his own insecurities and strangeness. I think, like, if anything, the plot jumping all over the place kind of mirrors Lawrence's own sense of confusion and uncertainty about where he sits in the world.
And I think it does bewilder you from like when it starts happening, but that it happens so often that you start to understand what's going on, that this is not as cut and dry as you would think. This man, I thought I had, the ending of this film pegged, quite easily. Of course the English would, turn against Lawrence, and then he would do an uprising against the people. He would go last of the Mohicans on them. And I was like, oh, yep, I know exactly what's going on with this. And then it kept weaving. It showed Lawrence's own malice. Then it showed him being, giving in to his masochism almost. When he gets caned, it's almost that he's denying himself enjoyment from it, which is that's a very deep moment for a film to take of any time.
Let alone back then.
Yeah, it's got so much involved in it.
It's a movie that almost stands on its own as a singular entity. I mean, we can talk about it in detail because we watched it so recently. But if you'd asked me, before I refreshed myself on this film to sort of really talk about it, I don't think I could have really gone into an enormous amount of detail.
Yeah, you could have gone
because I could recount to you what the experience of watching the film was like, but I don't think I could really ever, specify particular moments or put it into words in that sense, and that's because it's not a traditional, epic narrative film. It's far more. It's visually based. It's almost like Kubrick, 2001. it's a story that is entirely based upon what you see and how that makes you feel. And the story is almost incidental, more so in 2001, a lot less in Lawrence, but it's the passages in between the dialogue.
And it is,
It's
like the first, so up until Aqaba, it does have, you could probably, if you were straining yourself, you could probably go, yes, of course the film is about a man who goes to the Middle East. He befriends the various tribes to bring them all under one flag of being Arab. They make a mad dash miracle to take on the Turks, and the one man, it is the Last of Mohicans thing. He goes back in the desert to defy God himself, and he states that nothing is written. We are the ones who write it, and it's all very, uplifting sort of thing. It's very grand. You could probably do
there's
that.
also a real arrogance to it.
Oh,
and that's where it takes the right hand turn.
Yes, it sets up all these things. It sets up this, this is a man who knows exactly what he's doing. He has the will of God with him almost. But it's like, well, he's also a man who's believing his own hype.
Yeah.
And you're seeing what that does to a man. You're seeing what happens when he gives into, his bloodlust. It starts off that he can't kill unless he absolutely has to. They make a big deal that it's him killing for conflict resolution, or to put his ward out of his misery. After witnessing, after leading another one of his wards to his death. So it's a man twisting and turning over time, which you could have left him be a hero. Just a Hollywood hero.
Well, I think if you wanted him to be a hero, you'd end the film after he crosses the Sinai and gets back to Cairo and basically says, "We won."
Yeah, he comes back. He comes back in his garb, and he casts off. He doesn't become major. He goes back into the desert, and we don't hear from him again.
Yeah,
that's what I think. That's what the film nowadays would be.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Any film now would never end with the whimper that this one did.
Yeah, well,
of this man battered and beaten and basically past his use-by date. They don't need him anymore.
Yeah, and they show you.
And so
they show you his end in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, so you've got this overarching sense of, not futility, but foreboding, or just a sense of just understanding that despite everything he did, he was just a man, and he died the way so many others die every year.
Yeah, he believed himself more, and he may have been more than just a man at one point in time, but it is only for one point in time.
Yeah, and we all die the same.
Yeah, well, we all end up dead. Some of us in a motorcycle accident, some of us in quicksand, some of us in our sleep. But it's the great equalizer.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk about Omar Sharif's character more. Because, we've gotten into O'Toole and his performance and the way he's, characterized Lawrence. Sherif is really he's also gone on his, we talked about it before, that he starts off basically he could be the great antagonist. He becomes, a trusted friend, and there's great love between the two.
Exactly. And he's got that same kind of attitude that O'Toole brings to Lawrence in his character, this kind of louche sense of sensuality and authority to his role that makes him this incredibly intoxicating and attractive character.
Yeah, I absolutely loved watching every moment where Omar Sherif was on screen, because he exudes a confidence in his acting.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what he's doing, and it's not cocky. It is just very confident in what he's doing and where he's going with this character. The emotional fortitude that he has to bring across, in the moment where we see Lawrence's barbarism, where he has become what he was saying that Sherif was,
Yeah.
that he has such cruelty in him that he will which is far unlike Western man. You see Sherif cry.
Yeah.
And it is so moving that you truly understand what has happened to Lawrence.
What's been lost.
Yeah, this is, when they do talk about it, and he does have to basically say, no, he did not, he is the same man, but humbled. That is who he is since he came back from Cairo. This is still the great man, but you could see that he does not mean that. He
slowly, comes to terms with what Lawrence has lost from himself, but then also what they've lost.
Yeah, what everyone's lost
as friends and companions, and very, very close friends.
Yeah, and that you do see how that war does change soldiers, and it does change young men, and that they are truly pawns of, as Alec Guinness says later on, that
war is the province of young men, making the peace is the province of the old.
Yeah. And, this is what we're doing now, and it is not your time for it. And it's the old men who pick up the pieces, and pick up the pieces of the young men as well, because they have given themselves to create this resolution for the old men.
Yeah, so I mean, it is that curious thing of, step aside now. It's our turn to fix things up, but they fix things up according to what their wants and needs are. Never mind the bloodshed and destruction and devastation that has been wrought on these young men that have spent their bodies and their minds, in service of their country.
And that's something that, there are many veterans who are, suffer deeply from PTSD just from this very thing of being the young men that are put into play. And they don't have a say in anything but to go and, as Lawrence was made to do, to create chaos.
So, look, you see it quite strangely enough in the British exit referendum, where overwhelmingly the voters who voted to leave were old, and the ones that voted to stay were young.
Yeah, it does. Oftentimes it is the will of the old supersedes that. And that's not to say that in some cases that it's not for the best, but we do see it in Lawrence of Arabia, the effects it has on people, and we're going to see the effects that it has on the world of the Brexit as well.
Indeed. It is curious that, we talk about this movie because now this is, I don't know how successful they're going to be. My long form guess is probably not going to be very much, but this is a Britain that once again wants to try and make its mark upon the world, to become a player in its own right and reassert itself as an authority.
Yeah, get back in touch with the Commonwealth.
Get back in touch with what it was,
which is the British Empire.
In this movie.
Yeah, this is, are we going to see the, and the real life Lawrence did work under Winston Churchill. Is that where we're heading towards? Are we going towards a Churchill administration where it is hungry for war, and that's a scary thing to ponder.
Is. I think only time will tell on that one.
Yes. Well, I think we've hit the somber note.
I don't know if you can get much more somber than that.
Yeah. I think we started it off with the Brexit
and we've sealed the deal with the Brexit as well.
Yeah, and we've tied it all back, and
yeah, look at that go! All these nice little, got a little bow on it and everything. We don't. What we have can't be taught. We don't ask to be this good at our job. we just naturally are. Strangely enough, at this point, we would be talking about what film we're going to discuss next week, but I don't know what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah,
we haven't decided yet.
Dear listeners, you're now going behind the scenes, I guess.
God, we've just George R.R. Martin'd this podcast.
Oh no! Oh well.
Everyone else is going to be ahead of us now.
Well.
So you know what? It's going to be a surprise.
It's going to be a surprise. We'll probably, follow us on Facebook. We'll post up, a trailer for what we'll do next. If you do have a suggestion for us to take the burden of us having to choose off our shoulders.
It is a lofty burden, and I'm pretty tired. So
yeah, as you may have been able to tell. Dear listeners, we choose different films time and time again. We like to challenge ourselves by going over different genres, financial docudramas, then sci-fi horror films, now a true epic film.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I think we just want to talk about films that we like, or at least interest us.
Yeah,
I'll take a bad, interesting film over a good, boring one any day of the week. So that's basically what we're after. There's no rhyme or reason to these choices. It's something that we think is important, and if you've got a film that you think is important or interesting enough it's worthy of our trying to dissect it for an hour or so, let us know, guys.
Yeah. As always, follow us on the social media. Facebook, you can find all of the links there at our website, fromthesilverscreen.com. We are on iTunes. So please, if you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. I know everyone says this at the end of their podcast and all of that. It does help, especially the smaller podcasts like ourselves. We do rely a lot on your aid for us to get to more listeners, so we can impart our opinions elsewhere. Than just to ourselves.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So Thanks very much, Damian. This was
thank you, Josh.
This was a really good film that I'm glad we got to see, and I do hope our listeners once again do take the time to watch the film. It is a big ask, but
it is a big ask. Set aside 4 hours for yourself. It has an intermission. If you want to do it half and half over 2 nights or something like that, you can do that as well. But
do take the time.
There's a reason that they do take the time. There's a reason this film is generally regarded as one of the most important and amazing films ever made. And we can wax lyrical all we want, but at the end of the day, no review or evidence is going to be better than you sitting down and watching it yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next week, thanks for listening.
Toodle-oo.